Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today I'm here to talk about a poem. The poem that I'm going to be talking about comes from this collection of Polish poetry. My first expedition into here was for a discussion about What Can They by Julia Hartwig. Now we are going to be talking about a poem by Stanislaw Baranczak, and that particular poem is called The Three Magi. Stanislaw Baranczak was a poet, essayist, critic, literary historian, a translator, and an instructor. He taught originally in Poland, but at one point he lost his job because he was serving as an activist for workers' rights, and he fought along with other people, fought for him in order to get his job back. One of which is Lech Dymarski, who Baranczak dedicated this poem to, but Baranczak ultimately came to the United States, and even though the country gave him a hard time, he ultimately got to stay here, and he became an instructor of Polish literature and other Slavic-related literature at Harvard University from 1981 until he had to step down in 1999 due to Parkinson's. Baranczak ultimately lived until 2014, where he died at the age of 68. But Lech Dymarski, whom this poem is dedicated to, there's not a lot about him in as far as information in English is concerned. Dymarski is Polish. He stayed in Poland, and he is a poet, a political activist, and he's also a state functionary in post-communist Poland. He was a member of the regional legislature as well. But there is the Polish Wikipedia has a full page of Dymarski. The English Wikipedia only has the little information, but he led the protest in defense of Baranczak. He was interned during the 80s, which meant that they took him away and put him in living quarters that he was forced to stay. It's kind of like house arrest, only being placed in living quarters of their choosing. But I have a feeling that instance was the inspiration to this poem, but maybe taking this and making the circumstance even more extreme, where maybe they're not going to put you into a living quarters of their choosing or into a camp, but more of an extreme camp or a prison. But the way that this poem is structured, Baranczak does a fantastic job with imagery. You feel that atmospheric sense of the whole world falling apart right right in front of your very own eyes, and you're having it all taken away from you. The comfort of being in your own bed, which the fact that the forceps of the doorbell will pull you out by the head from under the bedclothes, dazed as a newborn baby, which is lines 3 and 4, where the subject is in the comfort of their very own bed, not knowing as they approach the door, maybe there's a good chance that they could have that inkling, but the fact that it's going to go from that to being stripped away of the basic freedoms, which I say freedom with a lot of weight because their freedom is not the same as the freedom that you would expect in the United States. Their freedom is more the ability to be able to get up when you want, eat when you want, take a walk when you want, read a book when you want. But if you go against the if you speak against their government, and in this case it's communism, it's a weaker communism than Soviet Russia or China, but you put yourself at risk of being detained and taken away. This poem also captures and is pretty much based on the men that have conformed to the Ministry of Public Security, which that is Poland's version of the KGB. It's also known as the SB. And one of the men that comes and takes away the subject is actually a former schoolmate of the subject, as they're being accused of posing a threat to their devices. As per lines 7 to 12, and I quote, "3 men, in one of them you'll recognize with sheepish amazement. Isn't this a small world? Your schoolmate of years ago, since then he'll hardly have changed, only grown a mustache, perhaps gained a little weight." It's that idea that the individual subject knows that what's going around them is wrong, and that the antagonizing forces that are stepping in and punishing them for thinking, feeling, and acting that way are pretty much outside one's circle. But to see someone that they knew conforming to that because it's a matter of doing as you're told and doing what you feel you need to do in order to progress at that time, and just give in that way, is a bit disappointing. It's very disappointing. The fact that they are contributing to the threat really brings people like the subject down. But the comparisons to the 3 wise men, which are referred to as the Magi, is really intriguing. The fact that the 3 wise men's, their gifts to Jesus were frankincense, also known as incense, gold, and myrrh. And the way they poke fun at the myrrh part of it, where they even, what in the world is myrrh to begin with? But they refer to the star of an ID will flash before your eyes, which is pretty much, at that point, the subject knows what they're in for. The gold of their watches will glitter. The smoke from their cigarettes will fill the room with a fragrance like incense. So, there's cigarette smoke, and the gold watches signify the gifts. And they're not really gifts, they're red flags. But this is pretty much a sarcastic jab as far as these being three wise men are concerned, because to them, wisdom is conformity, not thinking things through in order to figure out what is right and proper and the correct way of living. The last line is very haunting, as if everything is being taken away. And that is, and I quote, "Isn't this a white snow? Isn't this a black fiat? Wasn't this a vast world?" The fact that the subject is being walked over through the snow into the fiat and away from the world in which they were living in order to be part of something that is more restricted and more intense. It's going to be more, it's a worse world off, being pretty much written off from society because of decisions that they made that they felt were correct but went against the dominance of communist rule in Poland. But I think that this poem really spoke wonders as far as giving us an idea as to the arrest process of certain people were concerned. It wasn't as extreme as what we saw in Russia under Stalin, but it's still a pretty intense situation and a very saddening situation where one is being ripped away from their way of life just because they may pose, and may is underlined. They may pose a threat to the ways of the ruling class and to the establishment of the country. I definitely want to read more by Stanislaw Baranczak. He made many a contribution to literature. Being able to translate literature, and by that, anything. He would translate anything he can get his hands on into Polish. And his ability to also provide the English-speaking world with knowledge about Polish literature. And that would have been, he would have been somebody I would have liked to learn from, because I would like to learn more about and read more Polish literature. I've come across, through my endeavors, writers and poets such as Czesław Miłosz, Wisława Szymborska, Zbigniew Herbert, Julia Hartwig, and I want to keep going. And I want to keep reading what I have I want to keep reading from the writers and poets that I've already come across, because I know that there is so much more. But I'm really glad that I came across this poet and this poem, because there is I think that I really was able to read something that made me think, and I like that in poetry. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel. If you like what you see, be it from me or from one of the other contributors, please subscribe, because there is a lot more from where this came from. If you like this video, please give this a good old like. feel free to leave a comment and we can keep this discussion going. And if you really, really like what you see, please support us on our Patreon. For the money that we make will allow us to provide you, the viewer, with even more great content. For now, keep reading.